Hello, power players, and welcome to another season of the T-shirt transfer paper Power Half Hour. I'm Doug DeWitt, host of the show. Glad you could be with us today. Sitting behind all the monitors, working all the controls, our friend and your friend, our director, Rodeo Bo. And we've got a great show for you today, ladies and gentlemen, to kick off the brand new season of the T-shirt transfer paper Power Half Hour. This show is actually coming as a suggestion through our inbox, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you can do. If you have a topic that you want us to cover or a great idea that you think would make a great show, hit up our inbox, TTPPHH at Conde.com, and we will receive that message. We will get that email, and we might actually turn it into a show, which we're doing today, which is called T-shirt transfer paper shelf life. In other words, once you get a pack of paper, how long is it going to last on the shelf? How long can you print it and still apply it? What are the best things to do to make sure that I keep my paper as fresh as possible? We are going to cover those topics today and more. But before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, just want to give a time to shout out to the sponsor of the T-shirt transfer paper Power Half Hour, which is Conde Systems Incorporated, the people that make all of your sublimation dreams come true. And one of the new neat products that we have available at Conde Systems is this brand new printable pickleball paddle, part number VHG25. Now, interesting story behind this, ladies and gentlemen. When we got these in, I printed one up and gave one to my son-in-law because he's a professional tennis instructor. He's a professional pickleball instructor. He's big into the sport, and I gave him one with his favorite logo on it, figuring it would be a neat novelty gift. But he actually told me, he's like, this really has a nice balance to it. The weight between the paddle and the handle. He's like, it's balanced out really well. And he's like, and it's regulation weight. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pickleball paddle. So make sure you get yours at Conde Systems Incorporated. That part number is VHG25. Get one, print your most intimidating logo, and smash your opponents with printable pickleball paddles available at Conde. Now, another thing going on at Conde Systems, and we all know it, Valentine's Day is coming up. Valentine's Day is for my wife. I mean, Valentine's Day is her day. Super Bowl Sunday is my day. Valentine's Day is her day. Now, in the family, we just got a brand new grandbaby, as well as 3 brand new kittens. So, boy, am I glad that Conde has all of their heart-shaped sublimatable products on sale through Valentine's Day. Because you bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to get a few of these, and I'm going to put pictures of the grandbaby and pictures of the kittens. I'm not going to put a picture of me on one, at least not like this guy looking lovingly at his wife. This is how I look at my motorcycle. But you get the point, gentlemen. We've got Valentine's shaped items, sublimatable items on sale on our website, Conde.com. Make sure you check it out. Make sure to print something up for your significant other. She's going to love it just as much as mine, because remember, Valentine's Day is her day. So, guys, trying to do you a big solid, make sure you check it out. Okay, let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about today's topic, which is the shelf life of T-shirt transfer paper. Now, some of the questions that we've gotten through our inbox, TTPPHH at Conde.com, we've kind of taken those questions, kind of generalized them out, and put them together in this format. First question that people ask is, why does T-shirt transfer paper even have a shelf life? I mean, paper itself doesn't go bad, right, Doug? Well, remember, paper, which is made from paper pulp, it's a cellulose material, and it will go bad eventually. Might take a couple of hundred years to do it, but it will go bad. Now, in regard to transfer paper, what we got to remember is transfer paper is generally going to have a polymer coated emulsion surface. Now, whether that is a solid film, whether that is a particle coating or whatever, but the point is, it's the coating on these papers that start to go bad over the course of time. What usually gets to them? Well, these polymer emulsion coatings are designed to be soft and flexible. So what usually kills a transfer paper over the course of time is either that soft, flexible emulsion layer becoming rigid over the course of time and therefore losing its ability to properly bond to the fabric, or it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere over the course of time and therefore basically wreaks havoc whenever you try to apply the design to the garment. So that's how we're talking about why does transfer paper go bad? It's going bad because of the emulsion layer on the surface, and what usually gets the emulsion layer is just simple age or absorbing moisture from the atmosphere. Now, some other questions that have been asked is, do manufacturers or vendors put an expiration date on their transfer papers? Unfortunately, most do not, but some manufacturers do put a manufacture date on their transfer paper. So if you get that particular product, you at least have an idea of when the paper was made because they print that information usually on their packaging. Now, sometimes manufacturers will use a lot code system. So paper will have a particular lot code, and if there's an issue with the paper, we can trace it back to find out when that particular lot was actually manufactured at the vendor. So to answer that question, no, paper is not going to have an expire date or a use by date, but it might have a manufacturer's date or a lot number, which is a method that you can use to check when the paper was manufactured and whether you have good paper or old paper. Okay, now in regards to transfer papers, some are going to last longer than others. And you might be wondering, which is going to last the longest. Okay. Generally speaking, what I would say is any paper product that is film based, in other words, not made out of paper, but actually made out of a film. Those papers are usually going to last the longest on the shelf because they hold their shape and they're usually not as susceptible to absorbing moisture as some type of paper pulp would or that emulsion would. So, as far as a film is concerned, generally speaking, that is going to be your longest lasting transfer. Now, on the flip side of that, what type of transfer is going to break down or age the fastest? Now, I would say that would be any type of specialized inkjet transfer paper, usually a paper that is designed to self weed or a paper where part of the emulsion is designed to wash away, or any type of opaque material specifically designed for cutting with an optical or vinyl cutter. Okay, usually papers in that regard, they have to stay fairly fresh because they have a specialized application. Either they're releasing from the backing sheet on their own, or they're designed to be cut smooth. Now, as those papers start to age, you might notice that with an opaque material, it doesn't cut as clean as it normally should. It doesn't release from the carrier paper the way it normally should. Those are usually signs of paper aging. Some of the specialized inkjet papers, like those for the Chromolux system or those for the Reveal system, where it's designed to either wash away or self weed, those are usually going to have the shortest lifespans because, again, it's an inkjet product, which is usually not as durable as like laser products or direct to film products or hot split transfers or heat applied vinyls, but also because of the specialized nature. Those papers, such as the Chromoblast or the Reveal, have a tendency to absorb more moisture out of the atmosphere than other papers do. Okay, so that is probably the products that are going to have the shortest lifespan. Okay, um, is there a time frame to when you could consider a paper good or paper bad? Unfortunately, most manufacturers or vendors really don't publish that type of information. We have to basically go by our own internal testing in the years of dealing with these papers here at Conde. But I would say, in regards to shelf life of a paper, any type of specialized inkjet paper, such as Chromoblast paper or Reveal paper, I would put that shelf life between 6 months to 12 months. Okay. And like I said, it's because of the special nature of what those papers were designed to do. All right. So when it comes to those particular products, I would basically order those or stock those on an ad needed basis as much as you can. Now, standard inkjet papers, that have a solid polymer film. For instance, Nina's Jet Pro Soft Stretch or our Conde Jet Imprints to paper. But a lot of your typical inkjet papers that are solid film, including the opaque materials, generally have a shelf life of between 12 to 18 months. Now, papers that are going to last longer than that are going to be your color laser papers. And the reason color laser papers tend to last a little longer than inkjet papers do is because, remember, with color laser, we're dealing with solid toner, not liquid ink. So the emulsion doesn't have to absorb and suspend a liquid ink. It's just basically keeping a powder toner on the surface. Those emulsions are usually a bit more rigid, but they're also going to be more durable. Not only durable on the garment, but durable in regards to shelf life. Most of your color laser transfer papers are generally going to have a shelf life somewhere between 18 to 24 months. Now, paper products that are maybe going to last beyond 24 months on the shelf, like I said, those are going to be a lot of your film-based products. Products like the Forever Low Temp Laser Dark or the trim-free IC Dark that's available, shock line papers, a lot of your DTF films are going to have about that 24 to 30-month shelf life because, like I said, we're basically dealing with a film, not a pure paper product. Okay, so that's general range as far as shelf life is concerned if the product remains unprinted. Well, what if you actually print the product? Can you pre-print transfer papers and apply them at a later time? Again, this is going to depend on the category of the transfer paper that we are using. Okay. If we are using an inkjet t-shirt transfer paper, whether it's a specialized paper like the Reveal media, or whether it's a standard product like Nina Jet Pro Soft Stretch, the situation that you get into with those is once you print with the liquid ink and you suspend it within the emulsion of the media, at that point, the ink is going to start to dry out. So when it comes to an inkjet transfer, I would apply an inkjet transfer within 6 hours of producing it. If you've got an inkjet transfer like this, for instance, which I produced on Monday, but now here it is Tuesday afternoon, this print would probably have to go into the garbage can. What would be some symptoms of an inkjet print that has sat too long? Some symptoms would be you don't get a clean release of the color. The emulsion looks splotchy in certain areas, or you have a really difficult time peeling away the backing sheet after you apply heat and pressure with your heat press. Okay. So if you get situations like that and you've got pre-printed inkjet transfers, you're probably going to have to print up another batch. Again, I wouldn't use a pre-printed inkjet transfer beyond 6 hours after printing. So when it comes to inkjet printing, you pretty much have to go in a print and press operation. So in other words, not really take the opportunity to pre-press a bunch of transfers unless you know you're going to get to them within a couple of hours. Now, as we go into other types of transfer papers and films, we start to expand the time frame of when we can print and when we can actually apply. For instance, when it comes to a direct-to-film system, if you take that direct-to-film print and you powder coat it and you cure the powder coating, once you've got the powder coating cured on your DTF media, generally speaking, you have about 6 months to apply that design to a fabric. So you can store those pre-printed transfers, and if you're within 6 months, you should be safe to apply them onto your fabrics and have the transfer release clean, work the way it's intended to work. Now, on some other printing methods, that time frame might be longer. For instance, if you're dealing with a color laser printer or a white toner printer. Again, one of the advantages of using toner technology is that we're dealing with a dry toner, not a liquid ink. So it lends itself much better to be able to pre-print and press at a later time. How much later can we go? Well, on most transfer papers, once you print the transfer, assuming you store the transfer properly, you should be able to apply that design up to a year after you originally produced the print. Now, I can say from firsthand testing, I have tested that with Nina papers. I have tested that with Forever papers. I have tested that with Giotto and Parapi papers. And I've tested that with Shockline paper. And it all seems to be fairly true that the window between when you print and when you can actually apply up to a year, assuming that you've taken proper care of the pre-print design. Now, any designs that last beyond that time frame, well, there you're looking at maybe like a hot split plastisaw transfer or any type of heat applied vinyl transfer. Heat applied vinyl tends to store very well. Even after you do your cutting and weeding, you should still be able to apply a heat applied vinyl transfer up to 18 months after you originally produced it. Okay. Because simply put, the vinyl doesn't break down. So those are your different application ranges in regards to pre-print or pre-cut transfers. Just remember, if it's inkjet, you need to get into the habit of printing then applying. If it's DTF, assuming that the print is powdered and cured properly, usually within 6 months, you're safe. For most color laser transfers, you can go up to a year after you print and still apply to a garment. Anything beyond that probably needs to be heat applied vinyl or hot split transfer. Okay, so next question that we get on a regular basis: what causes the transfer paper to age? Mainly what we're talking about as far as environmental conditions are concerned. Okay. I understand that some people who run a garment decoration business, they may do it out of office or spare room in their house. They may do it out of their garage. Okay. There's a big difference in how paper breaks down being stored inside in a climate controlled environment and being stored outside in the garage. Usually, the two main contributors that cause the premature aging of your transfer paper is going to be exposure to direct heat or sunlight and exposure to moisture. Okay. And that's what you have to guard against. In other words, a paper that is good to print, and I'm going to use this as an example here. I'm going to put it on the box, try to hold it level to the camera. But you see how that paper lays flat? That's the sign of good paper. Any paper that has suffered moisture saturation is going to kind of look like this. In other words, it's not going to lay perfectly flat on a flat surface. You may notice the corners poking up or along the edge here, okay? Usually whenever you see a paper in this condition, that's usually a sign of being, exposed to heat. One thing you might notice is the paper slightly discoloring as it's sitting in the package, or it's been exposed to moisture. But when you start to see the paper get that kind of curl to it, it's time to put that paper in the garbage can and go with a new pack of paper. Now, some people have asked, okay, well, what if my paper is old or beyond its shelf life? Will it do any damage to my printer were I to use it? All right. Well, I would say in most instances, no. But there is going to be a little bit of risk involved. And usually, when it comes to an inkjet paper, if you've got an inkjet paper that is in this condition, the danger that you might run into is what we call head strike, which is when the print head moves over the paper, it's catching that raised edge. And the collision of that raised edge on your print head might do enough to damage the print head, knock the print head out of alignment, maybe knock some print heads out to the point where you're replacing a print head. In other words, it's always less expensive to replace a pack of t-shirt transfer paper than it is to replace a print head. Now, on the laser side of things, the danger that you might run into using old paper is what I would call emulsion separation. In other words, the emulsion is designed to stay on that backing sheet as it goes through the heat of a laser printer. But if that emulsion's old, there's a possibility that some of that emulsion may separate off of that sheet while the sheet is still in the printer. What's going to happen then is that emulsion is going to wrap around the fuser within your laser printer. And if you get emulsion around the fuser, you've got big problems. It either takes a lot of time to clean out that emulsion from the fuser, or you might have to get a replacement fuser. So my point is, it's always less expensive to replace a pack of transfer paper than it is something like a print head inside of your inkjet printer or a fuser inside of your color laser printer. So while there is some risk involved, you just might need to test your own paper. Now, if you are going to test your paper that you suspect may be a little on the old side, even if you get a clean release onto the garment, you're still going to want to perform a wash test of that garment. Now, any paper that has aged to the point where it's not going to produce a good transfer, you may not necessarily notice it when you first apply it to the fabric, but you will notice it the first time you wash and dry the garment. And the major symptom would be a significant loss in the color of the design after the first wash. Another system might be what I would call splotchy spots of emulsion, where it looks like emulsion is kind of gathered or glued in a particular area compared to the rest of the print. Those are usually signs of aged paper, just to give you a heads up there. Now, along that vein, if we're going to keep transfer paper at our shop, what is the best way to store your transfer paper? Now, to show you guys here, I have my storage case that I use for my transfer paper, and it's basically a lockable, sealable container that I picked up at a local office supply store. Only cost me a few bucks. I make sure to keep a pack or two of silicate inside of it to make sure it absorbs the moisture. And even though I've got my transfer paper inside of a locking container, I still keep it sealed inside of a Ziploc bag. Another habit that you're going to want to get into is whenever you receive a pack of paper, take a Sharpie or a marker and write down the date that you received the paper. This will help you keep track of your inventory to make sure that if you do have some paper that's about to expire, that that paper gets used before the new paper does. Okay, you know, just like with any inventory system, first in, first out when it comes to your transfer paper. So as far as storing your transfer paper, it doesn't take a lot to make sure that you store it, you know, in a safe manner. I would suggest some type of locking lid container big enough for your paper to lay flat in with some silicone packs inside to help absorb the moisture. Now, once you've got your paper set up and sealed up, you want to make sure that you store this in an environment controlled setting, which basically means inside the house, not outside in the garage. Okay. Keep it away from direct sunlight and direct moisture, and you should be able to maximize the life of your t-shirt transfer paper. All right. Some other questions as far as, you know, this is concerned. What type of environmental conditions for my shop are best when it comes to storing transfer paper? Really, as far as environmental conditions are concerned, as long as you keep the temperature at room temperature, you should be fine. What you really have to watch out for is the relative humidity inside of your shop. You definitely want to have a hydrometer in your shop if you don't have one already. Any type of inkjet paper, really any type of inkjet operating system, it's going to operate best between 50 to 60% relative humidity. Okay, so if you're working in a room that for some reason has a relatively low humidity, like it's the dead of winter, then you might want to consider getting a humidifier for your room. By the flip side of that, if you are dealing with an environment where it's like 80 to 100% humidity, like summertime in Mobile, Alabama, then you might want to consider getting a dehumidifier. But basically, you want to try to keep your room somewhere between 50-60% relative humidity. That is the best storage environment for t-shirt transfer paper. So, like I said, we basically wanted to take this episode and cover a lot of the questions that you had regarding transfer paper shelf life. Now, if for some reason we didn't get to your particular question that you wanted to ask, well, then leave us a comment either here on our Facebook feed or on our YouTube feed. But go ahead and leave a comment with your question. Rodeo Bo and I do check those comments and we make sure that we answer all questions that you leave. Pardon me. Also wanted to let you know that since we are starting the brand new season of the T-shirt Transfer Paper Power Half Hour, we will have our next episode on Tuesday, January 30th. And I hope you tune in then because we're going to show you an exciting new product available here at Conde Systems. It is the Romeo cutter offered by Caesar. Conde carries this cutter, and we are going to give you a live demonstration on the cutter 2 weeks on the next episode of the T-shirt Transfer Paper Power Half Hour. But until then, my name's Doug DeWitt, the host of the T-shirt Transfer Paper Power Half Hour. Thank you for tuning in. Our time is up. Thank you for yours.